Hey guys, it's Daniel here. So, remember The Walking Dead? Okay. I've discussed it a few times. Yep, that zombie apocalypse long-running TV series that just ended 2022. I made many videos about it and discussed the goodness of it. It is a very intriguing, it has lots of characters that you really care for and can root for, but also some characters you can despise a little bit. But they still have good chemistry with each other. The action moments are awesome. The stories they write are very intriguing. You feel for the characters and want to make them out of the zombie apocalypse situation. And the ending of that show was a very satisfying conclusion. Even though it also did set up for some spin-offs. Because, yep, we have 3 spin-offs that focus on characters from the main show that are finally getting their chance in the spotlight of Centered. In this video, I'm going to be discussing my thoughts on one of those spin-offs. I'll address this real quick. There are plenty of spin-offs in the Walking Dead franchise. We have Fear the Walking Dead, The Walking Dead World Beyond, Tales of the Walking Dead, and then we have these Aftermath spin-offs. But I'll be getting towards The Walking Dead World Beyond maybe soon. I don't know how I'm going to get to that. But for now, let's talk about the spin-off show that focuses on 2 polar opposites with some of the most iconic backstories of experience with each other. And that is Negan and Maggie in the spin-off series The Walking Dead: Dead City. So The Walking Dead: Dead City takes place after the events of the finale of the main Walking Dead show, and it follows Maggie, who is kind of in a situation because her son has just gotten captured by this group of people led by a mysterious man named the Croat. So she's trying to figure out how she's going to save her son, and it turns out that the Croat actually had some experience with her polar opposite enemy who is responsible for one of the most traumatic experiences in her life, and you all know who I'm talking about, the big boy himself, Negan, who is now travelling across the road with a little girl named Ginny. So, Negan and Maggie eventually cross paths, and eventually decide to team up to go rescue Maggie's son, who has been taken by the Croat and his people to the iconic Manhattan in New York City. So Negan and Maggie head over to New York City, come across some new people that could help them take down the Croat, and trying to see if they can get along with their current situation and their backstory encounters. So when I first heard that these spin-offs were coming out involving this one, I was kind of like, okay, I can see possibilities, but why did you announce this? Why did you market this before the main show even ended? Because it just gives away that these characters survive in the finale. Heck, even Jeffrey Dean Morgan, the actor for Negan, was a bit upset with the marketing. So, again, I was intrigued to see the spin-offs, but I do wish they didn't announce it before the end of the main show. But anyway, this show was originally supposed to be called Isle of the Dead, but then they changed it to The Walking Dead: Dead City. I don't know exactly why, but I think it was because, these spin-offs, The Walking Dead: Dead City, The Walking Dead: Daryl Dixon, The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. I can see why they decided to do that a little bit. But now that we are here, let's talk about my thoughts on The Walking Dead: Dead City. And what do I think of The Walking Dead: Dead City so far with its first season? I think it's really, really good. I think that this show definitely had a lot of things that The Walking Dead show needed in some seasons, and they present it full case in Dead City. And I think that this show definitely did a fantastic job at reintroducing us to the world of The Walking Dead after the main show ended, and to these 2 main characters. And speaking of which, let's talk about the first thing I love about this series. In my opinion, the greatest thing about this series, hands down, were the performances. I think that the performances, for the most part, definitely help to make these characters feel like they are in a troubling situation, and we want them to make it out alive, as well as our 2 main leads, which, my god, Jeffrey Dean Morgan in this series. He is still fantastic as Negan. I mean, seriously, As much as Maggie and Negan are supposed to be co-leaders, this really felt like a Negan-centric series. I mean, granted, Maggie is there, but honestly, sometimes when Maggie's in the same shot, I keep forgetting she's in the shot because I always see Negan, who really stole the show. I mean, granted, he always steals the show, no matter which season of The Walking Dead or what he's in eventually, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan makes him his own character in this season. He still has the funny quips, he still has, like, the facial expression mannerisms, but also you can tell that he is really trying to grow as a character, because yes, we've seen his redemption arc in the main series, but now that he is reunited with Maggie, things are not in a best spot, because, you know, Negan is responsible for a past trauma of Maggie in season 7 of the main show. So Negan, even though he is aware that his actions are unforgivable, he's still trying to convince Maggie that he's a changed man. But also, another reason why this felt like a Negan-centric story is because of his connections with the villains, because we get to see what encounters he had with these villains, we get to learn more about his past, his experience being leader of the Saviors, and it was all interesting to see. In fact, quick side note, these like different talks or backstories does lead to a really awesome cameo at one point. I will not dare give away what the cameo is, but my goodness, when you see this character, like, your heart will definitely be racing if you're a fan of the Saviors storyline. But Negan, still one of my all-time favourite characters in this franchise, and I think that he really stole the show in this season, and honestly, I think that's probably my favourite thing about this entire season, is the stuff they did with the Negan character. I thought he was fantastic. And I also still liked Maggie in this series. I think Lauren Cohan still did a fantastic job. In fact, come and think of it, I feel like this is the season where you see Maggie at probably her most vicious and violent. Because, yes, we've seen her being vicious and violent before, but this season, I mean, when she first shows up in the show, like in the first episode, she takes down a walker, and the way that she takes down the walker and reacts to being caught by this walker, my goodness, Lauren Cohan, like, this character means business in this season. And while her constant complaints and nags at Negan can become grating from time to time, I also was still sympathetic about what she was going through, because Herschel has been captured and she's having to work with the man who caused her such pain to go save him. So I can still understand where she's coming from. I just wish that she would, like, calm down a bit. But I thought Lauren Cohan did a fantastic job. And the camaraderie between Negan and Maggie, while their constant arguments, again, could become really annoying, I also really loved seeing both of them try to out-quip each other with their constant lines and jabs at each other, but also they can show that they have the capability of working together, even though they come from different backgrounds in the past. So I did like it that they managed to show that, and while I felt like that, like, the introduction to their reunion at the start of the show was kind of, like, contradictory a tiny bit to the end of the main series, I do like that they managed to reintroduce them, because this show definitely tries to reintroduce a lot from the main series, so that people who have stopped watching the main series can catch up and understand where the show is going. So I like that. And I thought that, again, JDM and Lauren Cohan did a fantastic job at performing their lines, as well as performing their characters and the camaraderie between them. Now, as for the other characters, besides its two main leads, I definitely really enjoyed many of them. I really like the character of Armstrong, the Marshal. I think that he was a very sympathetic, but also whenever he has to go into menacing mode, he can come off as pretty effective. But around all of his, like, background of him being like this marshal who's trying to hunt down Negan, you can tell that there is more to him, and you can understand where his character is coming from, because he's not just, like, searching for Negan because he has to. He does have a job to do, because he has, like, responsibilities and people that he has back at his own camp, and right now he's doing a job at searching down Negan, and he's just trying to get his job done so that he can go back to the people that he cares about. and I thought that the actor who played him did a fantastic job at making him come off as pretty awesome in fight scenes, but also making him come off as sympathetic, and in my opinion, he had one of the best character arcs in this season to make us really like him and want him to succeed with what he's trying to do. I also felt like that the little actress who played Ginny, the girl that Negan travels with, was very good, because even though for the most part she doesn't say a single word, she has to rely on facial expressions and body movement to make us understand what she's thinking and what she's trying to do. And I thought that the actress did a fantastic job, and I also felt like she had a great relationship with Negan, kind of like how Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us, or Logan and Laura from Logan. I thought that it definitely had a lot of those elements, and it helps us to see more sides to Negan, him looking after a little kid, and it helps us to really see that he's really growing as a character. Even though that the main show is over, he still has a lot more to develop. Now, as for the villains, I thought that the villains were also really good. Like the Croat, the main honcho in all of this, I thought he was a really awesome and very intriguing antagonist. He is, like, sick-minded. He has methods and motivations that honestly makes him come off as kind of cuckoo, but he has learned a lot because, like I said earlier, Negan and the Croat know each other, and I felt like that the Croat definitely learnt a lot of the mannerisms and quips from villainous Negan in the past, because he does have many lines that are very memorable. The actor did a fantastic job at making him come off as very scene-stealing, because you can clearly tell that just like Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan, he is having a ton of fun with his role, but he can also come off as kind of creepy when he needs to, because he gets up to people's faces and has this kind of weird and quiet way of talking, but when he has to be loud, he can come off as very charismatic, but again, can come off as a very imposing and very effective threat. And again, the actor did a fantastic job, and because Negan and the Croat have had experience with each other in the past, there's going to be some sort of rivalry that might happen, and without giving too much away, I thought that the possibility of that in the show was fantastic. It's kind of like, it's not as like big as, say, Rick and Negan, or say Batman and the Joker, but it definitely has a lot of like the Rick and Negan or Batman and the Joker kind of feels to him, and I thought that it really makes Negan even more intriguing because he's really facing a figment of his past self, and he's taken the chance to like be rid of that past self because he's fighting against someone who represents what he used to be in the past. I gotta say, the visuals in this show, my goodness, they are spectacular. I mean, the cinematography of New York City itself, I mean, man, this is some of the best cinematography in the Walking Dead franchise, and in my opinion, I think it's only going to get better because we have the next two spin-offs that have even bigger budgets than this one, but this one already set the bar for some of the greatest budget and cinematography in a Walking Dead show, because I don't think we've seen this much big cinematography and quality in the main series, or at least the main series didn't have as much of a budget or quality as this show, because I will admit, it did kind of feel like a bit of a movie kind of level. And again, it'll only get better in the next two spin-offs, but I feel like that the way that they really captured a dystopian Manhattan really gave a new kind of locale for the Walking Dead characters to face against, and I think that they demonstrated that very well, and the action moments definitely took a really hard toll in terms of like the different punches and the different fight scenes. They just really made the scenes really well, especially the action in episode 4. That was like well shot and really well done. The music in the show is fantastic as well. Really good scores to really fit intense moments or make dramatic moments come off as really cool. And the theme of this show in the intro was really awesome, really epic and really like action level type. And the last thing that I really liked about this season was its ending. I won't give it away, But the ending did kind of feel like it was like the middle chapter of a trilogy, or at least the start of something, because it leads into another season, because it really felt like a cliffhanger, and you wonder where Maggie and Negan are going to go from this ending because of what happens. And I gotta say, I am really excited to see what is next for Negan's character, because wow, that's going to be a really interesting topic to touch on in Dead City Season 2, I can tell you that. Oh, and one more quick side note to touch on something I also really liked about the show. There are a lot of callbacks in this season. Really cool, like, flashbacks and callbacks to other moments in the Walking Dead franchise that really added to the characters' motivations or development, but also added to the plot of this season. And again, it makes this feel like a really good adventure for these characters, and to help them deal with both their troubles working together and their own personal dilemmas. But unfortunately, guys, while I did enjoy this series, and I think it was a really good direction into the Walking Dead's future, I do have a couple problems with this series. The first issue I had with this series is that for a series that was doing a really good job for the most part at coming off as very new and added something different to the Walking Dead franchise, it does still have a lot of the same predictable qualities or story elements as any other season of The Walking Dead. We have to have the scene where these two people are trying to work together, trying to survive, and they meet new people who don't trust them at first, but then 2 minutes later they meet up again. They try to decide whether or not they can trust each other, and then it turns out one of them is a traitor in the mix. It is kind of predictable in some cases. I mean, granted, a lot of the Walking Dead shows and series have done this trope many times. Like the main Walking Dead show, it has done that many times, but even though they've done that, they still added some differences to it. Like, say, the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon series that I'll be reviewing soon. I don't know when, but I'll be reviewing that soon. That had some of those same qualities, and it still managed to add a little differences to it. This one kind of follows that same. This one has a few of the same cliches now and again, and I think that two major elements in this story make it come off as predictable, but also a little bit annoying. First of all, while I did say that the cooperation between Maggie and Negan was pretty well done, it also feels like a really big rehash of season 11, because they always didn't get along in that season, but then they managed to find a way to work together, and they come to the conclusion that Maggie can't move on, but that's okay, but she can also look past it. Yet this season seems to hit the reset button, and Maggie is now back to being viciously angry at Negan. Again, I can understand why she's angry at Negan, but it feels like that she's just reset her mind all over again to the beginning of season 11, and they're doing the same thing. Now granted, they do add a few new elements to make this cooperation kind of spice up a bit, especially during the finale of this season, but I felt like that because we are having to deal with the same dialogue over and over again, it makes a few of the moments between Maggie and Negan come off as repetitive, and in many cases annoying, because they're back to arguing with each other. Now again, I can understand that they want to make this season kind of like open and free-ranged to people who haven't caught up with The Walking Dead, either because they just didn't like watching it anymore and stopped watching it, and now they see a new series and they're wondering, wait, why is Negan and Maggie like working with each other? So I can understand that they're trying to kind of like make audiences kind of catch up to their adventures so that they can understand why they are arguing with each other and why they can't work together. And so I understand that. But in some cases, they don't really explore season 11, so you'd have to watch season 11 in order to understand a few moments, and some of Negan's like encounters with Maggie, and the fact that he had a wife in season 11. And also, as someone who watched season 11 and the entire show, the fact that they kind of hit the reset button on this cooperation between Negan and Maggie, again, came off as pretty annoying. And secondly, remember when I said that they have that new group, that the new group doesn't trust Maggie and Negan at first, but then they work together? Well, that group of characters, they were okay, but honestly, there wasn't anything that really made me, like, truly, like, connected to them. Like, the main ones, Amaya and Tommaso, I felt like that nothing really interesting that much about them. I mean, granted, they do have their backstory, and they do have a few moments where I was kind of hoping they make it out, but overall, they're just like one of those, like, same, like, oh, we're in trouble, but we're gonna take back our home, and there's a few little, like, reveals between the two, and that they might distrust each other, and then by the end of the series, it doesn't really matter with those characters, which I won't give too much away, but it just feels a little, like, empty by the end. And also, this is just a few little moments, but I felt like Amaya's actress could have needed a little bit work with her acting, because a few times I did buy what she was saying, but other times, like, maybe one or two dramatic moments, or some of her dialogue, like, monologue scenes, I felt like that there were a few moments where she was kind of phoning it in. It's not Kim Dickens level, but it's not like some of the best actresses in The Walking Dead, just average and adequate at best. Another major problem with this series is that there are quite a few elements that don't add up. I mean, most of the time, I really bought what was going on. It really felt like a realistic apocalyptic situation. But there are moments where I felt like, okay, I call rubbish on that one. For example, there's a character who's, like, on the other side of, like, big amount of water, and they're trying to make their way into Manhattan. So what do? They get into this, like, yellow crate kind of box, plastic box, and row themselves across the water. I don't buy that they wouldn't sink. I felt like they would have sank before reaching halfway through the river, so I felt like that was a bit of like an error on the writer's behalf. Like, oh come on, please, don't go for the Walking Dead level on us. But honestly guys, despite those problems, I found myself really surprised by The Walking Dead Dead City. I was kind of mixed about whether these spin-offs would work, but honestly, with like the high budget this show has, as well as the other spin-offs, and the fact that they do try to help audience members who watch The Walking Dead catch up if they haven't kept up with The Walking Dead, I personally think these spin-offs were needed, because not a lot of people were watching The Walking Dead at the time, and the show was definitely going downhill, so maybe these spin-offs are what they needed, and I felt like that this was a good starting point. I don't think it would be as good as like some of like the other spin-offs that might occur in the future, but for this one, I definitely think it's probably the most improved spin-off, like over, say, Fear the Walking Dead, or World Beyond, or Tales, and I think that this show definitely did a good job keeping its, like, story on its own, even though I felt like that it doesn't really have so much to connect with the rest of the franchise. It just felt like a bit of a side story, like it was like another installment in the franchise with its own story. But I did feel like that they were doing a good job with what they were given. The writing I thought was really good. The cinematography was fantastic, making a very believable apocalyptic New York. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is still fantastic as Negan, and everything with the Negan character I thought was great, and I felt like he gave the best performance in this entire season. Maggie was still pretty good, and I did feel for her mission. The villains were great, and I thought overall this was a really good addition to the Walking Dead franchise. And that's why I'm going to give it 4.25 stars out of 5. I think it's really good, and if you haven't kept up with The Walking Dead, or if you have finished Walking Dead, I'd say give this spin-off a watch, as well as the other spin-offs that are coming our way, which I will get to the next one soon enough. But anyway guys, what do you think of The Walking Dead Dead City? Do you really like it and you love the adventures of Negan and Maggie? Or do you feel like it's kind of boring, it's such another installment in the franchise and you don't understand its purpose? And I'll ask you this question: what is your favourite installment, like spin-off series or just series in general, in the Walking Dead franchise? Let me know in the comment section below. So anyway, I am Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, doing videos, hoping to get more videos done, and I will be reviewing The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon as soon as I can. Anyway, Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, doing videos, grabbing my bat of behind this microphone. Till then, peace out, man. Oh, you're all gonna be seeing that. Hiya! That was a pretty average Jeffrey Dean Morgan impression. Sorry.